What happens when your first realization of who you are is tied to something monstrous? For Michael, discovering his queerness came not from love or acceptance, but from whispers about Randall's crimes. A story that framed being gay as something dangerous. But The Deviant is not a murder mystery. It's a haunting journey into identity, obsession, and self-discovery, where finding the truth about yourself can be far scarier than finding a killer. The Deviant doesn't just explore queerness and deviance, it weaponizes that tension to show how dangerous societal narratives can be. What stands out to me is how Michael internalizes that fear so deeply that it doesn't just shape his identity, it limits his capacity for intimacy. Look at how Michael pushes Derek away. His inability to fully trust or let Derek in is a direct result of associating his queerness with danger. Michael doesn't just fear being seen as a deviant, he fears that embracing his identity might hurt the people he cares about. And that's where The Deviant really hits hard. It asks what happens when fear not only distorts how you see yourself, but how you let others love you. That's the emotional core that lingers long after the last page.
I think my favorite stuff is usually connected with the time jumps and the way they explain or expand upon emotions that characters are dealing with in time. So it gives it that almost True Detective, I guess, kind of vibe where characters can be informed by the past, and yet we as the reader can see how that has impacted their decision making and the kinds of people they are.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving deep into The Deviant, a psychological thriller from James Tynion IV and Joshua Hixson that blends horror with emotional depth in a way that leaves you thinking long after you turn the last page. Set against the chilling backdrop of Milwaukee during Christmas, past and present, Deviant tells the story of Michael, a man haunted by his own identity, as he uncovers truths that force him to confront not just a killer, but himself. At its core, The Deviant explores the intersection of queerness and deviance, and how societal narratives can warp self-perception. Michael's obsession with Randall, the convicted killer from 1973, is not about solving a mystery. It's about confronting the fears that have shaped his identity since childhood. Michael grew up in Milwaukee during a time when being gay was whispered about like a scandal, something dangerous, something deviant. His first exposure to queerness came through the chilling lens of Randall's case, an association that planted seeds of fear and self-loathing. This fear followed Michael into adulthood, making him question whether his desires were somehow wrong. And that's where his obsession with Randall begins, not as a search for justice, but as a desperate attempt to understand himself. But while Michael's obsession is about self-discovery, Roger, the 2023 killer, represents the darker side of obsession. Roger, a prison guard obsessed with Randall's past, was consumed by desire for control. He didn't want answers. He wanted to own the narrative of the deviant killer, molding it to fit his twisted desires. Both Michael and Roger are obsessed with the deviant killer, but for entirely different reasons. Michael's journey is about peeling back layers of fear and shame, while Roger's is about power and manipulation. One seeks understanding, the other seeks control.
Michael, I feel, is trying to learn about himself. Michael is having the journey of discovery. Michael is trying to figure out what queerness is, and he's learning about it kind of all the wrong ways at the time. His first exposure to queerness is this murderer, and then his buddy there who was like, oh, that's gay, that's queer, this is weird, oh look, this is gay porn, huh? So there's all of that going on. Roger obviously came from a more restrictive situation, and one thing with this series is we do not get to know too much about Roger. What we do know is that for Roger, it's about power. He does share that with us in the final issue. You must have felt so powerful. Roger's journey, as dark as it is about having power over his perceived deviance.
Michael's obsession is vulnerable. He's trying to understand something that terrifies him. He's peeling back layers of fear and shame, and that's a process that requires openness and pain. Roger, on the other hand, his obsession is defensive. It's about taking control of a narrative that scares him. Roger doesn't want to confront the truth. He wants to reshape it, to own it. And that's the real danger with Roger. His obsession isn't about understanding. It's about erasing anything that threatens his sense of power. The Deviant draws a chilling line between obsession rooted in vulnerability and obsession fueled by control. And that's what makes Roger so terrifying, because sometimes The most dangerous person in the room is the one who refuses to feel powerless. But what if the danger doesn't stop there? What if the true killer of 1973 is still unknown? To fully appreciate the emotional weight of the Deviant, you have to understand the characters who drive the story. Michael is our protagonist, a man haunted by internalized fear and self-doubt. His interviews with Randall are less about getting answers and more about reconciling his own feelings of deviance and queerness.
I think Michael is dealing with self-hate. I think he has felt for so long that he is some kind of a monster that now he has discovered a sympathy for this monster, the demon, the deviant monster, the killer in this story. It's tragic in some ways that he has gotten to a place where it's easier for him to connect with somebody who's an outcast than it is for him to connect with society at large. And that's very tragic, and it makes you sympathize and connect with Michael. I think it stems from this self-hatred.
Agent Hall, an openly gay and confident FBI agent, serves as a foil to Michael. Where Michael struggles with his identity, Hall embodies self-assurance, proudly displaying his sexuality, even with small gestures like his green fingernails.
Agent Hall is confident. He's self-assured. He is fully realized in who he is. Part of his journey appears to be that there was no time for self-realization. It's like you are what you are, and that's it. I feel his effect on Michael is Michael seeing someone so self-actualized that it's a motivator for him.
What's fascinating about Agent Hall for me is that his confidence isn't just a foil to Michael's insecurity. It's a reminder of what Michael believes he can never be. Hall is unapologetically himself. He exists in a space where queerness and power can coexist, which is something Michael never imagined was possible. But here's where it gets interesting. Hall's confidence isn't just inspiring, it's alienating. To Michael, Hall feels like an impossible standard. It's not just that Michael wants to be like Hall, it's that he doesn't believe he can. Hall's presence forces Michael to confront the idea that maybe the world he's feared isn't as unforgiving as he was taught to believe. And that's a terrifying thought, because if Michael's fears were wrong, then what has he been running from all these years? Randall, the convicted killer, becomes the lens through which Michael confronts his fears. But despite being labeled a murderer, Randall never confessed to the 1973 killings, leaving the truth shrouded in doubt. Roger, the 2023 killer, is a twisted mirror of Michael. His obsession with Randall leads him down a dark path, one that turns deadly when he seeks to recreate the past. And yet, the most chilling question remains unanswered. Who really committed the murders in 1973?
All right. If the Deviant continues in another volume, I think a great book for Michael to write is a follow-up to the 1973 murders, because why should we not try to help Randall in the present and clear his name? There is stuff clearly there from the past, like the dude who's killed in the department store Santa chair. What is that? Who was he? Why? And then, of course, knowing that the original mask, that if you wore them, it would like cut your face. So there's like clues that it could be somebody. There's some relationship there. I think a follow-up awesome story would be like, hey, let's try to clear Randall's name.
The Deviant isn't just a story about a killer. It's about the monsters we create when we let fear define who we are. For Michael, confronting the Deviant killer was never about solving a mystery. It was about proving that he is more than the deviants he was taught to fear. If the Deviant has left you with questions or thoughts, drop them in the comments. Do you think Randall was innocent? And where do you think Michael's journey goes next? Hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into comics like this, and I'll see you in the next one.